Grigor, a 68-year-old shepherd with a weathered face, sat calmly on a grassy hill, leaning on his sturdy wooden staff as his flock of sheep grazed lazily under the summer sun. His loyal dog, Murgu, lay nearby in the shade of an old oak, his ears twitching occasionally, eyes half closed, always pretending to sleep but ready for anything. Grigor sighed deeply, tugging his worn hat lower over his eyes to shield them from the glaring sun. "Murgu, my boy, you and I, we've got it pretty easy, don't we?" he muttered, casting a slow glance over the quiet, rolling hills. The only sound was the gentle rustling of the wind through the grass and the occasional bleating of the sheep. These stupid sheep! If only they knew how boring they made life. Not a single damn thing exciting ever happens out here. Murgu perked up an ear, perhaps catching the tone in Grigor's voice. The shepherd chuckled and scratched his beard, which had gone white long ago. "Maybe one day something interesting will happen, eh? Maybe some aliens will drop out of the sky, looking for a shepherd to show them the ropes. Ha! What do you think about that, Murgu?" The dog blinked lazily but offered no opinion. The stillness was perfect, too perfect, until a sudden piercing noise split the air. Grigor sat up, eyes narrowing at the bright flash streaking across the sky, moving too fast for anything human-made. He watched as it cut through the clouds, vanishing behind the distant hill. "Huh. Well now, Murgu, maybe I spoke too soon," he said, pushing himself up with a groan. "Looks like we've got ourselves something strange after all. What do you say we go take a look?" As Grigor trudged up the hill with Murgu following closely behind, he muttered to himself, "Could be a meteor, or who knows? If it's a flying saucer, well, then maybe I'll finally have something to tell at the pub, maybe even make some money off it." When he crested the hill, there it was, a small crater in the earth, but no fire, no smoke. In the center lay a strange, round object, about the size of a barrel, glimmering faintly with a soft blue light. Grigor took off his hat and scratched his head. "Well, what the hell are you?" he said, squinting at the thing. "A big hunk of metal? Looks too fancy to be a rock. Maybe some kind of newfangled stove, eh, Murgu?" The shepherd poked the sphere with his staff. It made a hollow metallic sound, and then the light brightened. The object started to hum softly, sending out little pulses of light. Grigor stepped back, watching with a raised eyebrow. "All right, Murgu, now I'm starting to think this ain't just a busted kitchen appliance." As Grigor stared at the sphere, it suddenly emitted a sharp noise, and a series of lights projected into the air above it. He blinked in disbelief. Floating there were holographic images, maps, symbols he'd never seen before, flickering and changing rapidly. "Well, I'll be damned," Grigor muttered, clapping his hands. "Now that's something. Maybe I ought to call the mayor. Bet the whole town would want to see this." Before he could decide what to do next, the low hum of an engine caught his attention. A strange ship, sleek and round, descended nearby, making a soft thudding noise as it touched the ground. Grigor stared as the door of the ship opened, and out stepped three tall figures, their skin a metallic silver, their eyes large and dark, with shimmering robes that flowed as they moved. They saw Grigor and froze, seemingly surprised to find someone there. "Well, looks like I wasn't too far off with that alien idea after all," Grigor said, standing his ground. "Now, what are you lot doing out here in my fields?" The aliens exchanged glances, then one of them pulled out a small device that whirred and flashed, scanning Grigor from head to toe. After a moment, the alien spoke, his voice robotic but understandable. "Human. Primitive. We require assistance. Sphere is ours. We lost." Grigor crossed his arms, a smirk forming on his lips. "Oh, is that right? Well, if it's yours, what's it doing in my field? Seems to me like we need to have a little chat about ownership." The aliens seemed to hesitate, their large eyes blinking in unison as they tried to process Grigor's words. The one with the scanning device, clearly the leader, tilted its head and spoke again, this time with slightly more clarity. "We need sphere. Very important. Give it to us, human, and we will leave your primitive home peacefully." Grigor raised an eyebrow. "Oh, leave peacefully, will you? Well, now that's generous of you, considering this thing crashed in my field, scared the sheep, and gave me a bit of a headache. Seems to me like that sphere of yours might be worth something. And I don't just mean to you. Could fetch a pretty penny if I showed it around the right people. The other two aliens exchanged nervous glances, their long fingers twitching. The leader straightened up, its metallic face unreadable, but clearly frustrated by this unexpected negotiation. Human. This sphere contains technology beyond your understanding. It must not fall into others' hands. Dangerous. Grigor scratched his chin thoughtfully. Dangerous, huh? Well, that's a different story then. If this thing's dangerous, maybe I shouldn't be touching it at all. But, you see, now I'm in a bit of a bind. You came all the way to Earth, messed up my afternoon, and now you're telling me this shiny toy of yours is a weapon or something? The leader alien took a step forward, raising its hands as if trying to de-escalate the situation. Not weapon, tool, used for navigation. We must retrieve it to return to our system. Ah, so it's your GPS? Grigor said with a chuckle, causing Murgu to let out a low growl as the aliens moved closer. Now we're getting somewhere. But you see, I still don't see why I should hand it over for free. How do I know you're telling the truth? For all I know, this thing could blow up half the countryside. One of the other aliens, who had been silently observing, finally spoke, its voice higher pitched and more urgent. We will compensate you. We have resources, information. We can offer knowledge beyond your species' current understanding. Grigor's eyes sparkled with amusement. Knowledge, eh? Now that's tempting. But you gotta understand, fellas, I'm a simple shepherd. I don't need knowledge. What I need is, well, maybe something more practical. Something I can use. Gold, maybe. Or how about something that could make my life a little easier around here? The aliens looked at each other again, clearly confused by Grigor's demands. The leader turned back to him and said, We do not have gold, but we have technology. We can offer assistance in ways your kind cannot imagine. Food production, energy. Food production, you say? Grigor interrupted, stroking his beard. Now you're speaking my language? Tell you what, I've got these sheep, and they're not exactly the brightest animals on the planet. If you could give me something to help manage them better, we might be able to make a deal. The aliens blinked again in unison, clearly struggling to adapt to this bizarre turn of events. After a moment of silent communication, the leader gave a slow nod. We can offer you a device. It will increase efficiency of livestock management. Grigor grinned. Now we're talking. All right, show me what you've got, and maybe, just maybe, I'll think about handing over your little glowing ball. The leader alien pressed a few buttons on its device, and a small palm-sized object materialized in its hand. It resembled a sleek metallic collar with tiny lights flickering around its edge. This device, the alien explained, will control your livestock, ensure they stay within boundaries, prevent them from wandering off, and improve health. Grigor took the device, inspecting it closely. Well, I'll be. A sheep-controlling gizmo. Now, that's something I can use. You're telling me this thing will keep them all in one place? No more chasing after them across the fields? The alien nodded. Correct. It will make your work easier. Much easier. Grigor pondered for a moment, then glanced at Murgu, who seemed unimpressed by the whole exchange. What do you think, boy? You ready to retire and let this little gadget do the hard work for us? Murgu let out a soft huff, as if to say, not a chance. Grigor chuckled. Well, I suppose it wouldn't hurt to try. All right, deal. I'll give you your sphere, and you leave me this sheep wrangler. Fair enough? The leader alien let out a sound that might have been a sigh of relief. Agreed. Return the sphere. Grigor walked over to the glowing orb and, with a slight effort, lifted it off the ground. Here you go, boys. One glowing space ball, just like you ordered. The aliens accepted the sphere carefully, their long fingers cradling it as if it were the most precious object in the universe. The leader gave Grigor a curt nod. Thank you, human. We will leave now. As they turned to go, Grigor called out, Hey, one more thing. If you ever come back this way, make sure to bring something better than a sheep controller. I might have other needs. The leader paused for a moment, then nodded again. Understood. With that, the aliens boarded their ship, and in a matter of seconds, it lifted off the ground, vanishing into the sky as quickly as it had arrived. Grigor watched them go, shaking his head with a bemused smile. Well, Murgu, I reckon that's the most excitement we've had in years. Who'd have thought? Aliens in the middle of nowhere, and all they wanted was a ball of light. And now we've got ourselves a fancy sheep collar. What do you say we give it a try?" Morgou barked, wagging his tail as if ready for the next adventure. The next morning, Grigor stood at the edge of his field, holding the alien device in one hand and eyeing his flock. He'd read the little manual the aliens had left. Surprisingly, it had symbols that were easy enough to understand. Apparently, all he had to do was activate the device, and his sheep would be the most well-behaved animals in the country. "All right, let's see what this thing can do," he muttered, pressing the activation button. The device hummed to life, and a soft, pulsing wave of light spread out across the field. The sheep, previously scattered across the hillside, immediately began to move as one, forming a neat, tight circle. Grigor blinked in amazement. "Well, I'll be damned. It actually works." Morgou watched, head tilted in curiosity as the sheep calmly stayed in place, no more wandering off or straying near the road. Grigor couldn't help but laugh. "Looks like we're out of a job, boy. No more chasing those woolly fools around all day." For the next few days, Grigor marveled at how easy his life had become. The sheep followed every instruction, staying exactly where he wanted them, moving only when he directed them with the device. No more stray lambs, no more herding them back from neighboring fields. He'd even started to get a bit bored. There was simply nothing left to do. But then, as with all things that seemed too good to be true, something went wrong. A few weeks passed, and Grigor had grown used to his new routine, or lack thereof. The alien sheep controller had made his job so easy that he barely had to do anything anymore. His flock was the envy of the nearby farmers, who couldn't believe how disciplined and healthy his sheep were. "What's your secret, Grigor?" the local innkeeper, Pastures, had asked over a beer one evening. Grigor had chuckled and waved it off. Just a little something I picked up from some out-of-towners." But there was something strange about the sheep. They had started behaving in ways Grigor had never seen before. At first, it was small things. The sheep seemed unusually focused, more coordinated. But then one morning, Grigor walked into the field and found his entire flock building something. It was a strange sight. The sheep, using their hooves and mouths, were moving rocks, sticks, and mud into a neat circular formation at the center of the field. Grigor rubbed his eyes, convinced he was seeing things. "Morgou, tell me I'm not going mad," Grigor muttered, watching as his sheep, supposedly the dumbest creatures on earth, constructed what looked like a tiny fortress. Morgou barked once, equally confused but alert. "What in the name of all that's holy?" Grigor scratched his head. He approached the flock cautiously. The sheep didn't scatter like they normally would. Instead, they continued working, their eyes now glowing faintly blue, just like the alien sphere that had crashed weeks earlier. "Oi! Stop that!" Grigor yelled, waving his staff. The sheep ignored him. Morgou growled and barked, running at the sheep to chase them off. But instead of running, the sheep turned in unison, forming a perfect circle around Morgou, their glowing eyes locked on the dog. For the first time in years, Morgou hesitated, his tail tucked between his legs. "Hey! Back off!" Grigor shouted, rushing forward. But the sheep didn't move. They just stood there, eerily calm, watching him. Grigor's heart started to race. All right, this is getting weird. Realizing things had taken a turn for the strange, Grigor rushed back to his small cottage. He grabbed the alien controller, fumbling with the buttons, trying to shut the thing off. But no matter what he did, the sheep remained in their trance-like state, continuing their strange construction project. "This damn thing's broken," Grigor grumbled. "I knew I shouldn't have trusted those shiny silver fellas." He glanced at Morgou, who was still eyeing the sheep nervously. "All right, boy, looks like we've got to do something about this before it gets out of hand. Maybe the mayor will know what to do." Grigor grabbed his phone and dialed the mayor's office. Mayor Marcel, a round man with a booming voice and an obsession with order, answered almost immediately. "Grigor, to what do I owe the pleasure?" Marcel asked jovially. Grigor hesitated, unsure how to explain the situation without sounding insane. Well, you see, Marcel, something strange is happening with my sheep." Marcel chuckled. "Strange? Come now, Grigor, your sheep are famous for being the most well-behaved in the whole region. What could possibly be strange about them?" Grigor took a deep breath. They're building something out in the field with rocks and sticks, and they're glowing. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Building, glowing. Grigor, have you been drinking again? I'm serious, Marcel, Grigor snapped. They're not acting like sheep anymore. They're acting like, I don't know, like they've gone and turned into some kind of alien engineers. The mayor's voice lowered. You're telling me your sheep are possessed? Because that's what it sounds like. I'm not saying possessed, I'm saying something's wrong with them. I need help. Marcel sighed. All right, I'll send someone over to take a look. But if it turns out you've just been hitting the bottle too hard, Grigor, I swear I'll have you locked up for wasting my time. Yeah, just get here quick, Grigor muttered, hanging up the phone. By the time Marcel and his assistant Ionel arrived at Grigor's farm, things had gotten even stranger. The sheep had finished their construction, a perfect stone circle, reminiscent of ancient ruins. In the center, a single pillar of stone stood, topped with what looked like a crude satellite dish made from twisted metal and old wire fencing. What in blazes? Marcel muttered as he stepped out of his car, eyes wide. Grigor, what on earth is going on here? I told you, didn't I? Grigor said, throwing his hands up in frustration. These sheep, they're not right. Something's gotten into them. Ionel, a younger man with a skeptical look on his face, approached the stone circle cautiously. This looks like a radio tower. A radio tower? Marcel scoffed. Built by sheep? Don't be ridiculous. But Ionel wasn't laughing. He crouched down and examined the ground around the structure. There's something more to this, sir. I think these sheep are transmitting something. I can feel the vibrations in the ground. Marcel paled. Transmitting? Transmitting what? Before Ionel could respond, a loud humming noise filled the air. The stone pillar in the center of the circle began to glow, the same eerie blue light that had been in the sheep's eyes. Oh, hell, Grigor muttered, backing away. That's the same light I saw when the aliens first landed. They've done something to my sheep. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook violently. The sheep moved in unison again, this time forming a line as if they were awaiting further instructions. The makeshift satellite dish atop the pillar rotated, pointing skyward. What is that thing doing? Marcel asked, panic creeping into his voice. Grigor, now more exasperated than scared, shook his head. I don't know, but I don't think it's good. Without warning, a beam of blue light shot up from the pillar into the sky, cutting through the clouds like a signal. All three men stared in awe as the beam pulsed rhythmically, like a giant beacon calling out into space. Murgu growled, his hackles raised, sensing that something bad was about to happen. I think they're calling the aliens back, Ionel whispered. Calling them back? Marcel echoed. Why the hell would they be doing that? Grigor's face darkened. Because those aliens left me with this sheep-controlling gizmo, and it's gone haywire. These sheep ain't sheep no more. They're alien puppets. As the beam of light continued to pulse, Grigor knew that something was coming. Sure enough, moments later, a familiar hum filled the air. Grigor, Marcel, and Ionel looked up to see the same sleek alien ship descending from the clouds. Great, Grigor muttered. Just what I needed, a second visit from my extraterrestrial friends. The ship landed gracefully in the same spot it had weeks ago. The door opened, and the three silver-skinned aliens stepped out, looking as calm and composed as ever. The leader approached Grigor, its metallic face betraying no emotion. Human, you have activated the beacon. Why? Grigor threw up his hands. Me? I didn't do anything. Your gizmo went rogue, and now my sheep are building alien radio towers. I think you've got some explaining to do. The leader glanced at the glowing stone pillar and the sheep standing in eerie silence. It turned back to Grigor. The device malfunctioned. Your livestock have been altered. Altered? You mean they're not sheep anymore? Grigor asked, his frustration boiling over. They are sheep, but now more. They have been enhanced. They are linked to the collective mind of our species. Grigor blinked. Wait, you're telling me my sheep are now part of some alien hive mind? That's just bloody great. The alien leader nodded solemnly. They are connected. It cannot be undone. Well, that's just fantastic, Grigor groaned. So what now? Do I just have to live with a flock of telepathic sheep? Grigor rubbed his temples, trying to comprehend the absurdity of the situation. So you're saying I'm stuck with a bunch of glowing sheep that can think like you do? The alien leader nodded again, unfazed. They are not dangerous, human. They will assist in gathering resources, but they must learn under our guidance. Gathering resources? Like what? Wool? Grass? Grigor retorted, his patience wearing thin. Because I'll tell you right now, I'm not interested in running a wool production facility for extraterrestrials. The aliens exchanged glances, their expressions difficult to read. Finally, the leader spoke. No, resources. From your world. We require biological material for research. In exchange, we will enhance your farming methods. You will produce more food, more livestock. Biological material? Is that a fancy way of saying you want to experiment on my sheep? Grigor snapped, his face turning red. Not experiment, collaborate. Your sheep have skills now. They can help us, and you, the leader insisted. Grigor sighed deeply. Look, I don't know what kind of deal you're used to making, but I didn't sign up for this. I just wanted a simpler life, not to become some sort of intergalactic sheep rancher. But you already are, the alien replied, and for the first time, Grigor could almost detect a hint of amusement in its tone. The sheep are linked. They will follow your commands, just as before, but now they have greater intelligence. You can benefit from this. Before Grigor could respond, INL stepped forward, raising his hand. What do you mean by linked? Will they still obey him, or will they act independently? They will obey, but they will also have thoughts, ideas. They will communicate with you, the leader explained. Grigor crossed his arms, considering the implications. So, my sheep can think for themselves, but they'll still take orders from me. That's comforting. What happens if they don't want to follow my commands anymore? The alien shrugged, a strange motion for its species. That is for you to manage. Like all livestock, they require guidance. I see, Grigor said slowly, the gears turning in his head. So, what happens if I refuse this little partnership of yours? The alien paused, its expression becoming serious. You will lose the connection. The sheep will revert. You will not benefit from their new capabilities. And we will find another way to gather the resources we need. Grigor glanced at the flock, still standing around the stone pillar, their eyes glowing softly. All right, I get it. You're putting me in a bit of a bind here, but I want assurances. I want to know exactly what I'm getting into before I say yes to any of this. The alien leader nodded. Fair. We will demonstrate the capabilities of the sheep. Then you may decide. Grigor raised an eyebrow. Demonstrate how? The alien turned and gestured to the sheep. Show us your commands. They will respond. Feeling a mix of skepticism and curiosity, Grigor stepped forward, waving his arms as if to direct the sheep. All right, everyone, gather around. To his astonishment, the sheep responded immediately, moving in unison and forming a tight circle around him. Murgu barked in surprise, and Ionel let out a low whistle. Now, that's something you don't see every day, Ionel said, his eyes wide. Yeah, well, don't get too used to it, Grigor said, grinning despite himself. Okay, let's try something else. He pointed toward the nearby hill. Go up there and bring me back a stick. To his amazement, several sheep trotted off, climbing the slope with surprising agility. Within moments, they returned, one of them triumphantly carrying a sizable stick in its mouth, dropping it at Grigor's feet. Not bad, Grigor said, shaking his head in disbelief. All right, how about this? Let's see if you can herd. He pointed to a spot in the field. All of you over there, get into a nice, neat line. With uncanny precision, the sheep moved, forming a perfect line in the grass. Grigor couldn't help but chuckle. This is ridiculous. I've been herding sheep for decades, and here they are doing it better than I ever could. The alien leader watched, its expression unreadable. They are now capable of advanced tasks. This is just the beginning. Advanced tasks, huh? Grigor said, scratching his beard. What else can they do? The leader tilted its head, considering. They can assist in gathering crops, managing livestock, even communicating with your technology. They are connected to our systems now. Connected? Like, they can use a smartphone? Grigor asked, raising an eyebrow. More advanced, the alien replied, but the concept is similar. They will help improve your agricultural practices. Okay, let's see that in action. Grigor grinned. What do I have to lose? Over the next few days, Grigor began to witness the full extent of the sheep's newfound abilities. With the help of the aliens, they organized themselves into efficient work teams. One afternoon, Grigor stood on the porch, watching as a group of sheep expertly harvested vegetables from the nearby garden. They worked in pairs, pulling up carrots and potatoes with precision, moving them into neat piles while humming a strange melodic tune. All right, that's impressive, Grigor admitted, his jaw dropping. He turned to Murgu, who was also watching, eyes wide. Did you ever think we'd see the day when sheep could do this? Murgu barked in agreement, still unsure whether to be proud or perplexed. Grigor decided to take a closer look. He walked over to the garden, where Ionel was kneeling, taking notes. You won't believe this, Grigor, he said, shaking his head in disbelief. It's like they've got a plan, a system. They work better than any farmhand I've ever seen. Just wait until they start managing the accounts, Grigor joked, a smirk on his face. We'll be millionaires in no time. But as the days turned into weeks, Grigor found himself enjoying the peculiar camaraderie he'd developed with the sheep. They seemed to understand him, responding not only to commands but to his moods and intentions. One evening, as the sun set over the hills, Grigor sat on the porch with a glass of homemade lemonade. The sheep gathered around, some munching on grass, others lying down peacefully. You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I think I might actually like having you guys around, he said, chuckling. You make my life easier. Suddenly, one sheep approached him, its eyes glowing faintly. Grigor tilted his head. What's on your mind, friend? To his shock, the sheep seemed to nod, then pointed toward the sky with its hoof. Grigor squinted up at the stars. You want to send a message to your alien friends? Tell them I need a vacation? The other sheep looked at him expectantly, as if awaiting his instructions. Murgu let out a low growl, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Just as Grigor was getting comfortable with the changes, another loud hum filled the air. He looked up, heart racing. Not again. The same alien ship descended, landing gracefully in the field once more. Grigor felt a mix of dread and curiosity. What more could they possibly want? The door opened and the alien stepped out, looking just as calm and composed as ever. The leader approached Grigor, who stood up, crossing his arms defensively. What is it this time? Grigor asked, trying to sound unfazed. Human, the leader said. We have come to assess the progress of our technology's integration. Your sheep are performing beyond our expectations. Well, I'm glad to hear that, Grigor replied, scratching his beard. They've become quite the little helpers, as you can see. The alien tilted its head, examining the flock with curiosity. This is only the beginning. We wish to expand the collaboration. Expand it how? Grigor asked, wary of what that might entail. We will introduce more advanced technologies, machines that will increase productivity even further. But we need your approval to proceed. Grigor raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite himself. Machines? What kind of machines? Harvesters, transport units, even medical equipment for livestock care. Your sheep will become leaders in agricultural innovation, the leader explained. Sounds ambitious, Grigor said slowly. But what's in it for me? I'm not running a charity here. You will have access to technology that will benefit your community. You will become a pioneer, a leader among your kind, the alien replied, its tone persuasive. Grigor hesitated, weighing his options. On one hand, the prospect of advanced technology sounded enticing. On the other, he didn't want to become some kind of alien puppet himself. All right, Grigor said finally, taking a deep breath. Let's see what you've got. But I want guarantees that my sheep and my farm stay mine. No funny business. The alien leader nodded solemnly. We will respect your terms, but you must understand. The changes will be significant. Significant how? Grigor pressed. Your sheep will become central to our operations. The integration will change your role as a farmer. Are you prepared for that? Grigor thought about it for a moment, glancing at his flock, now bustling with energy and purpose. I'm not sure, but if it means I can keep my farm thriving and my sheep happy, then I'm willing to give it a shot." With a newfound determination, Grigor watched as the aliens set up their equipment. Soon, massive machines began to emerge from the ship, transforming the once quiet field into a bustling hub of activity. Grigor couldn't help but marvel at the sight. The sheep, now equipped with collars that glowed softly, communicated with the machines, directing them as they worked. They became a seamless extension of the technology, coordinating tasks with surprising efficiency. Days turned into weeks, and soon Grigor found himself at the forefront of an agricultural revolution. The community was abuzz with news of the miraculous changes taking place at his farm. Neighbors visited, eyes wide in disbelief, as they watched the sheep perform intricate tasks and the alien machines harvest crops with uncanny precision. "Grigor, this is amazing," Petrie exclaimed one day, his jaw dropping. "How on earth did you pull this off?" Grigor chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Well, let's just say I made some unusual friends, and now my sheep are running the show." As word spread, the village began to transform. People from neighboring regions flocked to see the miraculous farm, where sheep were not just livestock, but partners in farming innovation. Grigor felt a swell of pride, knowing that he had not only improved his own life, but also the lives of those around him. And as he looked at the sheep, bustling about with newfound intelligence, he realized he had become part of something much larger, a community that was ready to embrace the unknown. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Grigor stood on his porch, watching the activity in the fields. The alien ship hovered nearby, a constant reminder of how far he had come. "Who would have thought," he mused, raising his glass to the flock, "that I'd end up as the leader of an intergalactic sheep revolution?" Murgu barked, as if in agreement, and the sheep gathered around, their eyes glowing softly in the twilight. With a smile, Grigor knew that the future was bright. Together, they were on the brink of a new era, one where humans and sheep could thrive side by side, guided by the mysteries of the universe. And as laughter filled the air, Grigor couldn't help but feel that he had finally found his place in it all: shepherd, farmer, and now, an unlikely ambassador for a world beyond his own. Years later, as Grigor stood at the helm of an ever-thriving farm, he reflected on how one fateful day had altered his life forever. The alien partnership had grown into a symbiotic relationship where humans and sheep worked together, sharing knowledge and skills. The town had transformed, thriving under the new agricultural methods introduced by the flock. Grigor often found himself surrounded by students eager to learn about farming and technology, their eyes shining with hope and ambition. In his heart, Grigor knew that it all began with a simple decision to embrace the unknown. And as the stars twinkled overhead, he raised a glass to the universe, to the sheep who had turned his life upside down, and to the adventures yet to come.